All right, class. I'm just going to do a little quick retell of what has happened in the story so far. Remember James, he was approached by an old man that had some magic things in a bag, and then they fell, and then they started growing a gigantic peach in a dead tree right here. And we have the ants who want to exploit it and sell tickets for people to see. So all these people came to see it. However, James, poor old James, could not see it. Oh, poor James. His aunts were mean. So he went one night, crawled there, and saw a little hole in the bottom of the peach. And in that hole, he kept crawling and eating his way, and he found the wooden door that was actually the pit, the seed of the peach. He opened it and saw inside 6 different insects. We have the green grasshopper, the spider, the ladybug, the centipede, the earthworm, and the silkworm. And we kind of have an idea of what their personalities are. We've got the centipede, who is very eccentric. He likes to make jokes and tease other people. We have the green grasshopper, who seems wise and knows everything. The spider, who seems to be kind of the second in charge. The little ladybug, who's very quiet and dainty and calm. We have the earthworm, who does not like anything the centipede does, and then we just have the silkworm, who hasn't done anything yet. So James was helping take all the boots off for the centipede because he's got 100 feet. However, no, he doesn't have 100 feet. And that is where we are so far. We are on chapter 13. All right, so let's start chapter 13. A few minutes later, Mrs. Spider had made the first bed. It was hanging from the ceiling, suspended by a rope of threads at either end, so that actually it looked more like a hammock than a bed. But it was a magnificent affair, and the stuff that it was made of shimmered like silk in the pale light. "Oh, I do hope you'll find it comfortable," Miss Spider said to the old green grasshopper. I made it as soft and silky as I possibly could. I spun it with gossamer. That's as much better quality thread than the one I use for my own web." "Oh, thank you very much, my dear lady," said the old green grasshopper, climbing in the hammock. "Oh, this is just what I needed. Good night, everybody. Good night." When Miss Spider spun the next hammock and the ladybug got in, after that she spun a long one for the centipede and an even longer one for the earthworm. "Oh, and how do you like your bed?" she said. "Oh, ah, oh, and how do you like your bed?" she said to James when it was his turn. "Hard or soft?" "I like it soft, thank you very much," James James answered. "For goodness sake, stop staring around the room and get on with my boots," the centipede said. "You and I are never going to get any sleep at this rate, and kindly line them up neatly in pairs as you take them off. Don't just throw them over your shoulder." James worked away frantically on the centipede's boots. Each one had laces that had to be untied and loosened before it could be pulled off. And to make matters worse, all the laces were tied up in the most complicated knots that had to be unpicked with fingernails. It was just awful. It took about 2 hours, and by the time James had pulled off the last boot of all and had lined them up in a row on the floor, 21 pairs altogether, the centipede was fast asleep. "Wake up, centipede," whispered James, giving him a gentle dig in the stomach. "It's time for bed." "Ah, thank you, my dear child," the centipede said, opening his eyes. Then he got down off the sofa and ambled across the room and climbed into his hammock. James got into his own hammock, and oh, how soft and comfortable it was compared with the hard, bare boards that his aunt had always made him sleep upon at home. "Lights out," said the centipede drowsily. Nothing happened. "Turn out the lights," he called, raising his voice. James glanced around the room, wondering which of the others he might be talking to, but they were all asleep. The old green grasshopper was snoring loudly through his nose, the ladybug was making whistling noises as she breathed, and the earthworm was coiled up like a spring at that one end of his hammock, wheezing and blowing through his open mouth. As for Miss Spider, she had made a lovely web for herself across one corner of the room, and James could see her crouching right in the very center of it, mumbling softly in her dreams. "I said, turn out the light," shouted the centipede angrily. Are, are you talking to me? James asked him. Of course I'm not talking to you, you ass. The centipede answered. That crazy glowworm has gone to sleep with her light on. For the first time since entering the room, James glanced up at the ceiling, and there he saw a most extraordinary sight, something that looked like a gigantic fly without wings. It, it was at least 3 feet long, was standing upside down upon its 6 legs in the middle of the ceiling, and the tail end of the creature seemed to be literally on fire. A brilliant greenish light, as bright as the brightest electric bulb, was shining out of its tail and lighting up the whole room. Oh, is that a glowworm? Asked James, staring at the light. It doesn't look like a worm of any sort to me. Of course it's a glowworm. At least that's what she calls herself, although actually you are quite right. She isn't really a worm at all. Glowworms are never worms. They are simply lady fireflies without wings. Wake up, you lazy beast. But the glowworm didn't stir, so the centipede reached out of his hammock and picked up one of his boots from the floor. Put out that wretched light, he shouted, hurling the boot at the ceiling. The glowworm slowly opened one eye and stared at the centipede. There is no need to be rude. All in good time, she said coldly. Come on, come on, come on, or I'll put it out of you. Oh, hello, James, the glowworm said, looking down and giving James a little wave and a smile. I didn't see you come in. Welcome, my dear boy, welcome, and good night. Then, and out went the light. James Henry Trotter lay there in the darkness with his eyes wide open, listening to the strange sleeping noises that the creatures were making all around him, and wondering what on earth was going to happen to him that morning. Already he was beginning to like his new friends very much. They were not nearly as terrible as they looked. In fact, they weren't really terrible at all. They seemed extremely kind and helpful in spite of all the shouting and arguing that went on between them. Good night, old green grasshopper. Good night, ladybug. Good night, Miss Spider. But before he could go through them all, he had fallen fast asleep. So that is chapter number 13. Just a real quick recap. So what happened was basically just getting comfortable inside the peach, James getting people for sleep, the spider creating webs for people to sleep in that turned them into hammocks, just like that with with little boy James, and he's going to sleep inside of a peach with a bunch of giant insects. Uh, find out what happens next in chapter 14. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you later.